I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We're leading off tonight with a fascinating story. It's about what happens when things don't go exactly as planned. In some parts of Oregon, that brings a response that some might call harsh, while others would call it reasonable. And it's our big story tonight. We're talking in general about the practice of prescribed burns. That's the lighting of forests on fire in a controlled way outside of the fire season. It's done to clear out the underbrush, which, if left alone, can create really massive wildfires. Well, last year in eastern Oregon, one of those controlled fires went sideways, and it burned 20 acres of private land. That did not sit right with a number of people, including the local sheriff, who arrested the Forest Service worker in charge of the operation. And that created quite the controversy. Environmental reporter Cale Williams reports.
What happened there should have never, ever happened.
That's Max Alonzo with the National Federation of Federal Employees. And he's talking about the arrest of Ricky Snodgrass. In October, Snodgrass was leading a crew conducting a controlled burn in eastern Oregon. The fire escaped containment lines and burned roughly 20 acres of private land. And that caught the attention of some local residents, who Alonzo said began trying to intimidate the firefighters.
Ricky, being in charge of these burning operations, decided that he was not going to escalate the situation, but he wanted the sheriff to come and just close the road so they could operate, safely.
But that's not what happened.
The sheriff came, and instead of even talking to the ranchers, he went straight over to Ricky, asked who was in charge, and arrested him.
The sheriff and district attorney for Grant County declined to be interviewed for this story. But Snodgrass was charged with reckless burning, and his case is still in county court. But that's not the only ripple effect from this incident. The people that oversee controlled burns, known as burn bosses, require special certifications. And Alonzo said the burn bosses he's talked to are wary of facing criminal charges for doing their jobs. That chilling effect could spell trouble for the rest of us.
If we don't have people that are burn bosses, we're not going to be able to do this kind of work. And we're going to get overgrown forest, and it's going to be extremely bad for the public.
John Bailey is a fire management professor at Oregon State University.
In many of the forested ecosystems in Oregon and Western North America, they evolved with fire as a very routine part of that balance of growth and decomposition.
A century of aggressive fire suppression, along with the end of controlled fires conducted by tribes in the area, has left our forests crowded with fuel. Add a warming climate to the mix, and the need for controlled burns has never been greater. But we're barely keeping up.
We're probably doing about a quarter to a tenth of the kind of natural routine burning that's going to be needed to be more sustainable moving forward.
And Bailey said that incidents like Snodgrass's arrest are counterproductive.
The sizes of acreages and the number of people and their possessions that are being impacted, that number is going to only keep going up if we keep just battling over this.
Now, there have been some controlled burns that got out of control with disastrous consequences. In 2022, controlled burns set by the Forest Service in New Mexico escaped and resulted in the state's largest wildfire in history. Nearly 350,000 acres were burned and hundreds of homes were destroyed. That is not the norm, though. Of the roughly 4,500 controlled burns conducted each year, more than 99% go as planned. Still, anytime you're intentionally putting fire on the landscape, things can go wrong.
But winds still change unexpectedly. Embers fly places we don't expect them to do. Things happen out on the site that we don't plan.
Alonzo said Snodgrass's defense attorneys are working to get the case moved to federal court, where he hopes to have the charges dropped.
This is a federal employee working within his job description and job duties that it was arrested for no reason.
But from Bailey's perspective, the issue of wildfires and forest management has gotten so dire that we need everyone pulling in the same direction.
It's a classic, complex problem that therefore requires a complex solution. And the only way to develop complex solutions is for everyone to be on board to the same mission that we're going to solve this.
Cale's here with me now. Super interesting. I remember the headlines when this happened, and I wonder how much the politics of the county play in, because in some parts of that county, they don't exactly love the federal government.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, this is not incredibly far from the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, and remember the standoff there. Now, I'm not trying to say that everybody out there is a Bundy by any stretch of the imagination, but there are those feelings out there. And Max Alonso, the union rep I talked to, he definitely feels like politics are involved in this prosecution. But the district attorney, who didn't want to talk for this story, he put out a statement immediately after, said Ricky Snodgrass is being treated just as anybody else would.
And I've interviewed the sheriff out there on a different story. He seems like a pretty straight shooter to me, and I could totally hear him saying, listen, if you burn somebody else's property, that's reckless burning. You're going to be prosecuted just like anybody else. Doesn't matter if you're a federal employee. So interesting. I wonder, too, does this make a case for more precautions on these prescribed burns so this doesn't happen?
You know, I've actually been out on a prescribed burn before. I did one with the Nature Conservancy back when I worked at the Oregonian, and I went through the safety briefing that they do ahead of these things, and they check all kinds of stuff: the wind direction, wind speed, temperature, relative humidity, fuel moisture, all that stuff. And it seemed like they were taking a lot of precautions. Like I said, I wasn't there on this one, so I don't know exactly what they did, but I would imagine it was similar. That being said, anytime you're taking live fire and putting it out onto environment, there's a chance that the wind is going to change and an ember is going to go somewhere where you don't think it's going to go.
And maybe if you're waiting for just that perfect day where there's not going to be any wind, you don't do any prescribed burns.
I think that's
That'd
probably
be tough.
true.
Yeah. All right, where's the criminal case and what happens next?
Well, it's still in Grant County. Like you heard in the piece, they are very much hoping to get this moved to federal court. And the thinking is there, federal court is maybe going to be a little easier on a federal employee. The next hearing in Grant County is scheduled for May 13th. And they're hoping that they're going to hear that it's going to move jurisdictions before then.
Very interesting. All right. Thank you, Cale Williams. Great stuff as always.
My pleasure.
So what about you? What's going through your mind after seeing Cale's story? Should the burn boss be charged or not? You know the drill. Send us an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. For many families, the cost of childcare is a huge expense. If you don't know, daycare costs have really soared in recent years. Ashley Grams is digging into the problem with a two-part series called The Cost of Daycare. She talked to a single mom who had to make the difficult decision between paying her rent or paying for childcare.
This one goes up here.
I think it goes over here somewhere.
Natalie Kaya is a mom of 4. These 2 are her youngest.
That one goes in the corner, I think. What do you think?
But life isn't always this simple.
Wow, you did that.
Mom has a lot more on her mind.
The cost of childcare is crippling.
Kaya is a single parent. Last year, she was running her own business with a toddler in daycare and 2 second graders in after-school care. The state of Oregon covered the cost through the employment-related daycare program. One day, those payments stopped.
I was kicked off of ERDC, and that was debilitating for our family. I mean, we could not pay rent. I couldn't pay bills.
The state said her salary was over the annual limit, which at the time was about $85,000 a year for a family of 4. She no longer qualified for help. Kaya would have to pay for childcare on her own.
Now it's over $3,000. It's full-time daycare for my 3-year-old as well as after-school care for my second graders.
She couldn't afford all the bills coming in.
Losing childcare was like the linchpin.
The most gut-wrenching, she couldn't afford to pay rent.
We moved into a family homeless shelter to attempt to regain stability.
Kaya needed help to support her family's most basic needs. They moved into a homeless shelter last spring. While it's not where she expected to be, she knows she's not alone.
I'm not the only one whose life has been derailed by losing childcare or not having access to it.
KGW surveyed over 40 care centers in the metro area and found tuition costs for children under 5 ranged from nearly $900 for part-time care to $1,600 a month if your child needs care full-time.
If you think about that, in Portland, right, like that's as much as rent, that's as much as your tuition for one of our state colleges. That's a lot of money.
Candace Vickers is the executive director of Family Forward, an Oregon nonprofit lobbying for universal childcare.
This is the one thing that keeps families from entering the economy. It keeps them from going to school, and it makes them have to make some hard decisions between paying the rent or paying for childcare or paying for food.
Compared to other states, childcare costs in Oregon are among the most expensive. The Annie E. Casey Foundation found Oregon ranked in the top 15 in 2023 with costs averaging $13,000 a year. The report also says 15% of families made job changes due to childcare problems.
Their experience is they're leaving the workforce. They're deciding to leave the workforce and stay home with their children.
As a single mom, Kaya doesn't have that luxury. In the past year, she's worked to regain stability, putting her own business on hold and taking a job at the Oregon Food Bank.
She's trying to make the puzzle with us.
As her income fell, her kids were again eligible for state-funded childcare.
Baby, this one matches.
But the worry that she won't always qualify for the subsidy and her monthly childcare bill could jump again by thousands is a threat she can't ignore.
Because you either have to be here where you're getting government support, or you have to be here
Way above it, yes.
where you can actually afford to pay for everything.
Yes. And there's a lot of people in that messy middle. All of my friends exist in that messy middle.
For now, she avoids the messy middle, doing what she can to put the pieces back into place for her kids.
You did that. Good job.
Ashley's with me now. Super interesting story. But hasn't childcare always been super expensive?
Right. I mean, I think it's always been a problem for parents who are trying to balance it and have a career. What we've seen is that COVID and the pandemic did change the landscape of childcare, and the county estimates that there are 20% less daycare providers than there were prior to 2020. So you're working with less places to send your kids.
And maybe that raises the cost a little bit even higher. All right. And I know that I can hear viewers saying, well, if she's a mom with 4 kids, single mom, how come she's not getting child support for those kids?
Right, and it's a great question. When I talk to her, what you see is that she is really the main parent for these kids. She's in charge of them. She's making sure that they get the care that they need, and so what she's working with oftentimes is her salary.
Okay, so we don't really know what's going on with all that. That's fine. What was it like to see the world through her eyes? That must have been super interesting.
Definitely. A mom who, she's running her business successfully and then ends up in a homeless shelter. I think, it gives another dimension to why people land in that situation, and it shows that everyone kind of has a unique story when it comes to them needing help to support their family's most basic needs.
Yeah, and what a big deal childcare is. Okay, Ashley Grams, thanks. Great stuff. And make sure to tune in to The Story tomorrow night for part 2 of Ashley's series. Tonight she focused on the problem itself, and tomorrow she's going to look at solutions. What are Multnomah County and even the federal government doing to help fix the child care system? Again, that's tomorrow night at 6:30. Coming up next on The Story, Portland police raided a homeless camp along Northwest Burnside this morning, and it comes on the same day that the city, county, and state have partnered for a new program focusing on homeless outreach downtown. Blair Best will be along to explain when The Story returns. 8 homeless people were arrested after police raided a camp in northwest Portland today. It happened around 10 o'clock this morning, and shortly after that, we learned about a new program to expand police and outreach work in the central city. Blair Best has the story of how Portland's fentanyl state of emergency played out on one block today.
If you frequent downtown Portland, chances are you've seen this homeless camp on the corner of Burnside and Northwest 15th Avenue. It was recently posted for removal. Gigi was preparing to leave when police showed up Wednesday morning.
And all of a sudden we're being rampaged by the Portland police.
Police arrested 8 people on outstanding warrants.
Majority of the people here that were here are now in the back of the cop cars.
Gigi's boyfriend included.
And apparently he's just being booked and released.
They're just plowing through. It's ridiculous. I get it's ODOT property and stuff like that, and I respect that and all that. But I think it's just kind of bull.
So less than an hour after police showed up, a city camp removal crew came and started removing all the tents and everything inside them. But another group showed up, and they had a different mission.
We're doing a pilot program outreach for Monoma County and the governor, doing rescue missions.
Terry Connor is an outreach worker with Sober Housing Oregon.
We're able to assist them in getting detox, immediate beds, and clean and sober housing.
On Wednesday, the team behind the 90-day fentanyl state of emergency announced they're expanding a program where mental health and addiction outreach workers like Terry, along with police, connect with people on the streets struggling with addiction.
There's the meth look, and now there's the fentanyl look.
Magdalene is 20 years old and knows them both well.
Can't gain weight, ulcers, just everything, and not to mention the infections that you get.
Magdalene declined the offer for services Wednesday. Gigi was the only one at this camp who wanted help.
A lot of them have lived this way so long, they're accustomed to it, and they're just afraid to change.
But neighbors, afraid of being identified, say a change can't come soon enough.
It's encouraging to see some action taken. It's a step. I don't know how long, it will take for it to return.
We're allowed to go about 2 blocks every 2 blocks. Every time we're told to move, we just go another 2 blocks until we're told to move again.
Blair's with me now, and Blair, super interesting story, and maybe I just haven't seen it before, but my first thought is, thank heaven somebody woke up and decided, yes, we should have outreach workers with immediate placements available when the police are sweeping these places.
Right, it's something they've been doing slowly, since December, but the timing piece, I think, needs to be worked on a little bit, because as we saw today, only one person at that camp expressed any interest in getting help. And that's because the majority of the people there were too angry with what had led up to that point to accept any help. Because as we saw, the police showed up, arrest 8 people, then the camp removal crews come in, throw all their things in trash bags, and then the outreach workers get there. And by that point, many homeless people had either left or they were too upset to trust an outreach worker who they haven't met before with accepting any help, especially something as big as detox.
Right. Okay. Well, it's a good point. How did you come across this story?
Well, actually, I pass that homeless camp every morning on my drive into work. And so this morning when I saw it, I saw the police cars out there and they were pulling homeless people out of the tents and lining them up. So immediately when I got into my photographer at the station, I was like, we got to go check that out. And when we got there, what you saw from the police to the camp removal crews to the outreach workers, that all happened within 1 hour and within 1 block. So it's an example of the many layers that make up this homeless crisis and the response to it.
Yeah, fascinating and great reporter instincts, by the way. What's going to happen next? Are we going to see more of this type stuff all around the city?
Right. So typically, when we see police engaging with homeless people, a lot of times we think of the bike squad, right, arresting drug dealers downtown. We don't necessarily see all the time police raiding homeless camps like this. So an officer on scene told me it's actually part of a joint mission with the Central, North, and East neighborhood response teams, where they target problem areas once a month. And today, their focus was downtown Portland. They were actually on a retail theft mission, but they decided to raid that camp first.
Oh, kind of a twofer day for them. All right. Well, thank you, Blair. Appreciate it. Fascinating stuff as always. Coming up next now on The Story, we'll share some of your thoughts on Portland Public School thinking about adding a junior ROTC program. It is a hot topic in the district, especially one that's strapped for cash. So what do you think? We'll find out what your neighbors think when The Story returns. Now let's get to some of your thoughts on a story we brought you yesterday. It was about Portland Public School thinking about allowing a junior ROTC program in some of their schools. That's a military program for high school students which operates in thousands of schools nationally, but only 5 schools here in Oregon. A PPS spokesperson says schools would have the choice to either add or forego the programs. In a letter to board members, district officials say it's unknown how the Portland Public School District would pay for junior ROTC. And that's a sticking point for many of you, PPS having to pony up money for the program. Elaine wrote to us to say, why on earth would PPS have to pay for a JROTC program? Let the military pay it out of the huge amount of our taxes that goes to the U.S. military budget. Davina told us, I have no problem with including this program in area high schools, but only if the U.S. military pays for it. And how about this one from Terry? I understand that the military is the only or best option for some people, but I personally think the military brainwashes impressionable young people who are too young to make those decisions. Junior ROTC would start the brainwashing at an even younger age. The school systems definitely should not pay for military recruitment.
Absolutely not to the JROTC, to PPS. They can go to private schools if they think it's such a wonderful opportunity. Oh, that's right. Those kids don't really have to think about the military as a vocational choice because you know what they say about the senator's son? Yeah. No, it's only the poor that have to think about fighting in wars to make a living.
All right. Thanks for your input there, Margie. The majority of your comments to us, though, last night actually support having ROTC in local schools.
I was in Idaho growing up. I was in ROTC and loved it. I think it's great. I didn't go in the Army till later, but I think it's a great idea.
And Pat told us, not all kids want to go to college, so unless they are exposed to other types of careers in high school, many will never reach their full potential. We grew up with ROTC in school, and it was never pushed on kids. Let the kids decide. A military career is an honorable profession.
I agree with them putting ROTC in the schools. That is the best thing that's ever happened. It also makes the kids learn respect and has something to follow on. They need it. It'd be the best thing for them.
All right, thanks for that, Joyce. And we'll end on this one from John. What is one good objection to a program teaching teamwork, leadership, obligation, and respect? It helps people get into scholarships, advanced military. PDX will be against it because of the bubble they live in. Well, time will tell, but we'll keep you posted on what the board is deciding on. And if you missed our segment last night, you can always find that and full episodes on the story section of the KGW YouTube channel.
To find that section, go to the KGW YouTube page, scroll down a bit until you see the bolded words, The Story, and click that. That will bring you to the story page where videos are listed in chronological order, the most recent at the top, going back in time as you scroll down.
So how about that? You're never going to miss a show that way. By the way, thanks for all the emails and phone calls you give us. I've seen there are emails coming in right now about the stories that we've done today. We appreciate that. We'll get back to you on that. In the meantime, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. The good stuff is coming your way next. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30. As we go out, we'll take a live look at a variety of sky cams on the Oregon coast.